thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And the first thing I want to say right off the bat is, if you think to yourself, now wait a minute, if you go to the United States Senate, why won't it change you the same way it seems to change other people? My answer to that is, if I went to Harvard Law School and Harvard Divinity School and didn't drink the Kool-Aid, believe me, I can go to the United States Senate, I won't drink the Kool-Aid there either. I'll remain the same person that I know I'm supposed to be. I became a Republican in 1982 in Massachusetts. That was the equivalent of having leprosy. So I'm no recent convert for the purpose of some personal ambition. I became a Republican when it wasn't popular for anybody to be a Republican, and it certainly wasn't popular for a black man to become a Republican. But I stood up for what I believed in, and I joined the Republican Party because I believe that the principles of the Republican Party are the principles that I hold dear. And my task, as I see it, in running and hoping to be elected, is to make sure that the Republican Party stays true to those values. And I think all too often the reason why we're in the position we're in right now is that Republicans went to Congress and they forgot who we were supposed to be, and they didn't turn the people out because the people were disenchanted and discouraged, and now look what we got. But folks, I'm telling you, don't be discouraged, because there's an awakening in our country now. Republicans are standing up for the principles we hold dear. And if the leadership that we have in the Congress now doesn't do it, we're going to send new leadership, but we're going to continue this fight, and eventually we're going to have a Congress and a president that will hold true to the values that made the country great. We are not going to lose this battle. We're going to win it. Now, I was in a room like this on the first Tuesday in November of 2008. Along with others who were there presumably to celebrate what victories we had, but we really kind of ended up mourning the tremendous loss we had. I remember walking out of that function hall with my head hung down thinking, oh God, what's going to happen now? Our country has made a big mistake, and now we're going to have to live with that mistake for the next 4 years. And sadly, everything I was concerned about is coming to pass. We are witnessing in breakneck speed the fundamental transformation of our country. We're fighting to reverse it, but they're doing everything that they can to see to it that what this president promised, that he would change this country fundamentally, indeed comes to pass. We have $4 trillion added to the budget, added to our deficit in only 2 years. $4 trillion in only 2 years. We have added 200,000 federal employees to our government. We have increased the size of the federal government by 25%. He has spent as much in his presidency as was spent, half as much as was spent in the whole history of the country up until then. And the amazing thing is that there seems to be no cessation. There seems to be no appreciation of the fact that we have spent ourselves to the brink of bankruptcy, to the brink of fiscal cataclysm, and they still want to spend more. It is an amazing thing to me. Imagine, ladies, you tell your husband, honey, we spent $10,000 last month. And he says, oh, okay. And you say, but the only problem is we only took in $6,000. And he says, well, I've got the solution to that. What is that? Let's cut the budget next month by $15.
Excuse me?
That's the equivalent of what they offered in that first $6 billion offer of a cut. Out of a $3.65 trillion budget, let's cut $6 billion. That's the equivalent of $15 out of $4,000 overspent on a $10,000 a month budget. It is insane, folks. It's insane. And we need to realize something. We are not dealing with budget issues. That's not what we're confronting. We are dealing with an attempt to fundamentally redefine who we are. That's what this is really all about. It is about a larger and larger and more encroaching and overbearing government. They never have any compunction about expanding government. Frankly, if it weren't for the Republicans that we sent in 2010, they'd still be trying to expand it. That's their nature. That's what they want to do. They have this idea that if you expand government larger and larger, you will make a more just society. You will, of course, in the meantime, of course, you make them far more powerful and give them far more control over the American people. But this is what they're trying to sell us. And we need to remember to go back to the fundamentals. That's one problem I have with the Republican leadership that we have now. They need to keep bringing Americans back to the fundamentals. This is not just about dollars and cents. This is about a fundamental battle over who we are as a country. Are we a nation of socialism, a nation of wealth redistribution? Are we a nation that seeks to use the government to try to decide who the winners and the losers will be? Or are we what the founding fathers envisioned, a nation of limited government, maximizing freedom for the American people so that each person gets to fulfill his or her dream with hard work and personal responsibility and the use of their God-given talents? Now, we've got two different visions that are being competed against here, and we've got to say to the American people, let's make sure that the vision that is fulfilled is the vision that our founding fathers had for us. That's how we became the greatest nation in the world. And if we don't follow that vision, we're going to end up on the dung heap of history as a once great nation. I'm not going to stand for it. I know you aren't either. And obviously, I would ask for your support. I would ask for you to consider me to be your next United States Senator from Virginia. Now let me distinguish why I think it's important that I win this race. First of all, this can't be a race about the past. It's got to be a race about the future. I'm going to run a positive campaign. I'm not going to be attacking anybody because I don't think that's what we need. I think we need to focus on what our country needs right now. It's not about me building a career. Folks, I'm 59 years old. I've had a career in law. I've got a career in ministry. Believe me, I'm not looking for a career. But I believe our country's in trouble, and I believe we need people who are going to stand up and fight for the future that we know we want to hand down to our children and to our grandchildren. So it can't be about the past. It's got to be about the future. Number one, that's number one. Number two, it can't just be about the Tea Party. Tea Party is wonderful. It's been a tremendous help to our country, but the Tea Party can't do it alone. We need a candidate who can reach out to the Tea Party, and I've been a Tea Party activist, who can reach out to Republicans, traditional Republicans, and I've been active in the Republican Party for many, many years, who can reach out to social conservatives and national security conservatives. I'm already doing that. We need someone who can bring those things together, and we need someone who has the potential to expand the base of the Republican Party. Look, folks, the demographics of our country are changing. And we need to reach out to black Americans, we need to reach out to Hispanic Americans, we need to reach out to others and tell them the conservative message is what you need if you want your life to be good in this country. You're not going to ever make progress with a message of government dependence and the society owes us something and we're victims. Folks, I grew up in a poor town called Chester, Pennsylvania, probably in the poorest part of that poor town. My dad was a welder for 33 years at Sunship Building and Dry Dock Company. He never once told me, son, you can't make it because of racism. You can't make it because the country's unjust. My father told me, son, you can do anything you want to do. It's up to you to make a life for yourself, and don't come to me with any excuses. That's the message that we need to take to those communities. So it's got to be somebody who can reach out across all these lines and begin to bring people together. And let me just assure you of something. I don't give a different message when I'm standing in front of a predominantly black church. I give the same message everywhere I go because I believe it's the truth. You know, somebody once said, I tell the truth because it's easier to remember. Well, I don't give one message to a predominantly white audience and another message to a predominantly black audience. I mean, the truth is the truth, and I think it is what's going to help bring people into our movement, into the conservative movement, and realize that's where they belong. The data shows, for example, that the black community, particularly the church community, is more conservative on average than the white community. How do you get the incongruity of conservative people voting for all these liberals? I mean, you've got, for example, black community voting for Bobby Scott. Bobby Scott is opposing Congressman Randy Forbes' effort to pass a resolution to reaffirm our motto, "In God We Trust," and yet he'll go to churches and campaign there, and they will vote for him. I mean, it's got to stop. And frankly, I believe I'm someone who can take that message authentically into those communities. Now, that's part of it. But look, also, this is the first time in my life in following politics I've seen Americans angrier and more fearful than I've ever seen us before. I mean, I can feel it when I go places. People really believe, and I do too, that for the first time in our history, our country's freedom is at stake from within. That we are under siege, and that we've got to do something to turn this situation around. Well, that voice needs to be heard. And frankly, folks, I know a couple of the other candidates, don't know them all, know a couple of the other candidates, but I'll tell you one thing, I don't think anybody is angrier about this than I am. And frankly, I want to go to the United States Senate and shake things up. I'm not interested in business as usual or interested in being one of the good old boys. I don't think I'd fit anyway. I'm interested in representing the voters of Virginia to say, hey, we have had it, we've had enough, and we're not going to put up with any more. So I think I bring that voice to anything that I do, and I'll certainly bring that voice to the United States Senate. Obviously, we need to bring fiscal sanity back. I mean, this is crazy. This is... we're not talking about fiscal responsibility. We're beyond that. We're in the area of psychosis now, where we need psychiatrists up there talking to people. And so obviously that is important. And then for Virginia particularly, one of the things that has angered me about this president is, you know, I heard one economist say that we probably already lost 30,000 jobs as a result of the energy policies of the Obama administration. We had 67 oil rigs drilling in the Gulf. We're now down to 7, I believe. And this president tells us we're drilling more than we've ever drilled. And I was talking to somebody from Alaska the other day. They said, we ought to fly every politician up to Anwar and let them see what they think they're preserving. It is a barren wasteland, and we only need a small sliver of it in order to drill, but they won't let us do it. Well, Virginia's suffering, and the country is suffering as a result. Our coal industry, if this president has its way, will be shut down. He said as much, and I want to fight for energy. Look, I happen to believe that God put that coal there and put that oil there for a reason. And that it's idiotic not to go down there and get it. So I think we ought to go get that energy that we have. So, and obviously, I am running not only for those reasons, but I'm also running because I believe that the one hope I have, and believe me, I can't find any points of agreement with this president at all, but the one hope I had was that, well, maybe he'll bring us together. You know, maybe he'll be a force for sort of ending all of this racial nonsense. Boy, was I disappointed. I mean, instead he has made it worse. He and his minions have played the race card again and again and again. I mean, he even said to an author writing a book, well, I believe that the opposition to me is a subterranean racism. No, it's not a subterranean racism. It's above the surface disagreement with your crazy policies. That's what it is. It has